Thank you. So I enjoy the outdoors, but not snow in October. I'm not used to that. I was in shorts and flip-flops yesterday at home, so and I'm going back to that. So I like the snow, just not in October. But it was pretty this morning, so there's that. Maybe you guys don't think it was pretty. You're saying, no, it's way too early. Is it way too early? That's what I've been hearing. Everyone's saying way too early. So it's the earliest I've ever seen snow in my life. So this was a big day for me today, okay? So I like to be interactive. You guys come to these sessions and you sit all day and you have people talking at you, and I want to have a chat. So I'm going to ask a lot of questions. I'm hoping that you're willing to share your experiences, because I think that's where the magic is. It's not just in my ability to share my thoughts with you, but it's in your ability to share your thoughts with one another as well. So we've got a jam-packed agenda, but I don't believe in hitting the agenda just because it's what I said I want to talk about. If there are things that seem to be important to the group, we'll go down that rabbit hole. Okay, I'd rather you guys get out of this session what you need to get out of it, not what I had planned to talk about. Okay, so if there are things specific you want to talk about as we're going through, raise your hand, stop me, and we'll go down that hole if it is going to appear to be good for the whole group. So here's what we want to talk about over the next hour and 15 minutes or whatever, and you'll let me know when we're getting close. So I like to start out with the dark side always. There are so many speakers, I think, they give their big idea, whatever it happens to be, and then the last 10 minutes, it's all the doom and gloom of what will happen if you don't do all of these things properly. I like to get that out of the way first. Let's talk about the ugly stuff first. If we have a plan, why do they fail? Okay, and we'll look at those things because I think that gives us some insight not only into how we change our strategic planning, but how we can make it better if we have one or get one in place if we don't. So we're going to look at that first. We're going to spend a ton of time on linking HR to the overall business strategy. What strategies do we need to put in our HR strategic plan in order to ensure that we are facilitating the company's plan and where it's going to go? And then we're going to look at some action planning. I'm a big believer that when you come to these sessions, you should walk away with stuff to do. Okay? Not just ideas. So I want to give you some takeaways, some things that I would expect you're going to jot down and say, yeah, these are things I can get going on right now. And so that's where I think is important. I can remember when I was still in industry and sending some of my associates to an HR conference, and they came back, they had all kinds of great ideas, and we spent almost the whole department meeting talking about their great ideas, and I said, what are we going to do with it? And what do you think I got? The puppy dog, went like, oh, what? You expect us to do something? Yeah, you just went away for a couple of days. So I want to make sure you can do something. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time in theory. I want to get into some nuts and bolts that you can actually take back and start working on. Okay? So let's go down this path of why strategic plans fail. Can anyone give me what they think is the number one reason that strategic plans of any type fail? I'm sorry? Close. We're going to talk about that. It's in the top 5, actually. I don't have it as my number 1, but it is in the top 5. Alignment, that's kind of similar to that one, at least in my book, but yeah.
Execution.
Okay, execution, but there's something that has to come before execution. Communication. Thank you. Communication, number 1 reason plans fail. Okay? Either we don't do them, or we do them and we hide them. How many of you know that your business has a strategic plan? And keep your hands up. And how many of you have actually seen that plan? Excellent. No hands went down. Okay. And if I went out on your shop floor, whatever, to your frontline employees, how many of them have seen the plan or heard about it? Yeah, that's what I thought. Not so many. Okay. Who is in charge of making sure that our strategic plans work? Yeah, everybody, okay? So why don't we share the plans with everybody? It's like, oh, this is something, the executive team goes off to some swanky resort and they disappear. And maybe you're one of those executives that goes to the swanky resort and disappears for a couple days or a week. And you're under the auspices of, we're strategic planning, okay? And so you come back and supposedly there's a plan. And maybe it's in a nice shiny binder and it gets put on a shelf. And I always have to laugh when I'm working with a client and I say, let me see your strategic plan. And they take it off that shelf. First thing I do is get the dust off the top, and then I open it up and it literally creaks and cracks and groans and everything else because it has not been opened since it was first put on that shelf several years before. It makes no sense. That strategic plan is our roadmap to success. At least that's what we've said it's going to be. So it'd be like going on a cross-country trip and not turning on GPS and not taking a map with you. Now, that's a cool adventure. Okay, it really is. If you're not concerned about where you're going to end up and how you're going to get there. Great for vacation, maybe not so great for business. So we've got to be able to communicate that plan out. But one of the key things that fails is not just lack of communication, but how it's communicated. So when you say something like, oh, our strategic plan says that we're going to capture 20% more market share. Does everyone in here know what that means for your business? I don't know. Does your frontline person know what that means? Does R&D, does IT? I mean, you could go down the line. What does that even mean? If we can't communicate out the strategic plan in terms of what each individual department or widget making line or whatever it is that you do can relate to, then the communication has failed. So communication, number one reason why our strategic plans fail. So if you have a plan now and it's not being communicated, there's your first piece of homework. What do we have to do to get this thing communicated out so that people can help us to impact it? And I don't care if it's a 5-year strategic plan and you're in year 4. Figure out how to communicate so you get at least a year out of effort. Okay? But communication. So part of our strategic planning process has to start with how are we going to communicate this plan to our people? Has to start there. Okay? Because no matter how good that binder is and what's in it, if we don't communicate it, nothing is going to change. Next one is leadership. So those of you that have seen your strategic plans, and don't raise your hands on this one, how many of them are not working because no one is taking ownership of them? One person mentioned ownership as a challenge. Ownership comes in 2 ways. We're going to see it later on my list. But in this regard, the king's taken full ownership of the plan, down to he's painting the lines on the roads. That's a problem. We've got to have leadership that can delegate out authority to work on the various pieces of the plan. And that includes your HR strategic plans that we're going to talk about. Especially if you're a department of one. You can't do it all by yourself. You're going to need other line managers and executives, people on the shop floor, frontline people, customer-facing people, helping you to implement the plan so that you can get the results out of it. So leadership's ability to delegate and look at people and say, you have full authority to implement the plan, you have everything you need to go make it happen, and I'm holding you accountable to do it. If that's not part of our plan, then it's just a plan. It's just a piece of paper with no one's ownership. And we'll see that come back in not only in my top 5, but in the elements of the plan as well. Number 3, we have ideas, but we don't have a real plan. Now, I've tried to research to figure out whether this is photoshopped or not. I really hope it is photoshopped. I honestly cannot find whether that's real or not. Okay? I hope that that's photoshopped, because if not, it is the classic no plan behind the idea. Gee, let's build a bridge and let's start from opposite ends of the river or the ocean or whatever the heck they're building a bridge over there, and whoops, that's a problem. How many of us have those disconnects in our organizations right now, where one department isn't talking to the other? Whether through animosity or it's just not built into the culture. It could be either. How about a situation where one shift doesn't talk to another shift, and therefore information isn't transferred? Okay? That comes back to communication, but it also comes back to our ability to bridge the communication gap and to take things from just a pure idea, this nice to have, down to an actual plan that we know if we implement it and follow it step by step, we are going to hit our results. Clearly, this was a great idea. No plan behind building that bridge. Next one, passive management. So good old Michael Scott here, for those of you who are fans of The Office. What was his biggest problem as a manager? Go ahead, call it out. Not doing, well, he was doing a lot of stuff. I'm not sure it was managing, but okay. What else?
He wanted everyone to like him, so he was pretty passive.
Yeah, he was passive. He did want to be liked. That was one of the, if you're a studier of people and in HR, you probably ought to be to some extent. The poor guy wanted to be liked by everyone. And certainly we know in leadership that's a recipe for disaster, recipe for failure even, and insanity for that matter. But one of the things that I used to get a kick out of when I would watch that show was the fact that he always assumed that things were running, did he not? He'd go off and have his adventures. Meanwhile, Dwight's setting the office on fire. Jim is putting Dwight's stapler in Jell-O. The one lady's getting a bat trapped over her head. I mean, all kinds of hijinks are happening, and Michael has no idea. Now, you may not have drastic examples like that, at least I hope not, going in your workplaces, but you probably have some passive managers that are just kind of going through the motions, and we're not holding them accountable to making sure things get done. And we're going to look at that as a part of our strategic plan, where that accountability piece comes in with management, because it's absolutely critical. If we think that because we've communicated our plan out and that people have taken ownership that things are going to run like clockwork without accountability, we're kidding ourselves. This accountability piece is huge to avoiding passive management. And finally, there's that personal ownership. We can have the best plan. The contents of that binder could be the best. We could have hired the best facilitator to come in. We've got the marvelous ideas in there, and we've communicated it out, and we've got accountabilities put in, and our managers know what's going on. But if people don't take ownership of it and say, yes, I'm willing to work on this because I'm motivated to do it, then all that other stuff that we did is for naught. When I think about HR, I think our job can be boiled down to this. And I don't mean to simplify what we do, but I'm going to simplify what we do. If you think about it, everything that we do comes down to this. We come up with a package that's intended to attract, motivate, and retain people. Those same people say, yes, I will be attracted to your company, I will work for you, and I will stay engaged for that package. We shake hands, and all starts a beautiful relationship. Is that not what HR essentially is at its heart? I know I'm oversimplifying. We got compliance concerns. We got all kinds of other stuff. But at its heart, that's what HR is. So why do we have problems with ownership and motivation? Where does that come in if HR is that easy? This is where you guys can talk.
Positive engagement.
Okay, so engagement. It's a piece. We're going to talk about that.
Value alignment.
Okay, there's that. Value alignment. I'm sorry? Direction how? What to do. So they don't know what to do. They want to do it, but they don't know what. Okay. Or why they do what they do. Okay. I would say it's bits and pieces of all of that. What it typically comes down to, again, I'm a simple guy. I like to keep things simple. You changed up the program when you asked me to do something different. You asked me now to take ownership of a strategic plan or pieces of it. That was not in our initial engagement that we shook hands on. We're now out of balance again. Think about, do you guys know what percentage raise you have to give someone to get their behavior to change? Anyone seen this stat? It's going to scare the heck out of you if you haven't.
Like 20% and only for a period of 6 months.
Oh, it's not that bad. I agree with the time frame. It's not quite that bad. Maybe you've heard that. I haven't heard that one. There was a study done by Wharton a number of years back, not a number, 3 years or so, and they looked at a bunch of different engagement surveys, and they pulled all of it together. And what they found is that the magic number is 7. 7%. Anyone giving out 7% raises? Other than maybe for a promotion? You're giving 7% raises out. Everyone get her business card. She gives 7% raises out. Okay? That's a monster raise when you think about it. And so we wonder why we give someone their 2% raise and they don't do anything different. What is 2%? It's pepperoni on their pizza every Friday night. I mean, let's be honest with ourselves, HR. That's really what it is. Now, I'm not telling you don't give your 2% if that's all you can afford. I'm asking you to think differently about what motivates someone. You're going to give me pepperoni on my pizza for the next year. Thank you very much. I like pepperoni. Okay, great. But you want me to do what for that pepperoni? Where's the value proposition? Okay? There is where lack of ownership starts. Lack of engagement starts. And it's not just about money. Don't take that away, okay? Because there's a lot of other things that come into play. I'm looking at the total package you're offering me. When something gets out of whack, I'm not motivated and I won't take ownership. And we're going to look at that as a piece of our strategic plan. We're going to spend a lot of time on it because I happen to believe it's the critical piece of our HR strategic plan, is our ability to motivate our people and generate that personal ownership. I sandwiched this in at the end of the top 5. We had communication, I think, is the biggest. It's not that I think this is the least important. I think it's the other slice of bread on the sandwich. It holds everything together with communication. Okay? And so we will look today at how this piece and communication tie back into the strategic plan and why it is so absolutely critical for us to have this going on in the back of our mind with every decision that we make when it comes to HR. So, what is our most important asset? What? Are we sure about that? HR? I don't know. This is like, if I talk to a bunch of operators, that's the response I get, because the rest of them will say, oh, it's our equipment, it's our trucks, it's our vehicles. Okay, generally it's our people. Not just in terms of the human beings, but in terms of what they cost us. What percentage of your business's budget is represented by all things people? 70. Wow. Someone in the earlier one said 85. It's the highest I've ever heard. You think it's around 80 for you?
83.
Okay. Oh, you know it. 83. So we're not even guessing here. It's 83. You know it. That's high, which is okay. It's not right or wrong. It's just that's okay. Anyone else know what that number is? I'm going to challenge you in this session to know some of these numbers. HR, you have to know these numbers. You can't manage them if you don't know them. What we do know is this. HR and everything associated with it is nearly always, you never say never, you never say always, it's nearly always the biggest line item regardless of what the percentage is. At a low end, let's just play at the low end, I've heard 30%. That's still the biggest chunk of the budget at 30%. It's clearly at 83 or 70%, or a gentleman in the earlier session said 85%. Okay? We're responsible for a ton of money. Do we know what we're doing with it? That's going to be a big piece of our strategic plan, is that allotment of that resource, that financial resource represented by our people, not just about the flesh and blood of our people. We're going to look at them both. All right? So, when I think about strategic planning, we've got this plan sitting here. We don't know what's in it yet. We just got this plan. We know we need to do it. And what I want to look at is how we contribute to our business's strategic plan. Because once we know that, we can then derive our HR plan out of that. Give me something that we need to be considering. This is broad level strokes when it comes to our strategic plan for a business. Not just HR, but for the business. What do we need to be thinking about?
Vision, mission, values.
Okay, that's where it starts. Let's come down one level from that. We want to get into not quite the weeds, but a little level bit below the vision, mission statements. Okay? We'll call that environment. There's a lot of other things we're going to lump under there. I'm going to throw that under environment. That's a good one. What else?
Workforce plan.
Workforce plan. That's too weedy now. We want to come back up.
Sustainability
Of what?
of the business.
Sustainability of the business. So we're going to look at that in terms of perhaps market trends. And again, that might be under the environment as well. All right? That's going to be a critical piece. Others?
Business objective.
Okay? Key performance indicators. Better know them for our business. Someone stopped me after the previous session. She says, Ed, what do you believe the number should be of key performance indicators? What do you think I said to her? Any ideas? 3 to 5, maybe 7 if you're stretching it. Her company has 15. I don't care whether you agree with my 3 to 5 or 7, but 15 is way too many. You can't manage 15 key performance indicators. Can't. All right? So we've got to figure out what our key performance indicators truly are. All right, let's look at this here. We're going to spend the bulk of our time right here on this slide. All these slides will be available for you. I understand they're probably not posted yet, but I know conference leadership does have it, so I guess you will get these slides. But what I want to do is I want to go around the circle, and we want to look at each of these in depth as to what HR needs to be doing with each of them. So let's start at the top with market trends. What do we need to know and be doing about market trends for our business? I'm an HR guy too. I'll stand here and look at you all day long.
The supply, demand for products, services.
Okay, so what's the current supply and demand for what we do? Is it growing? Is it shrinking? Is it stagnant? But more importantly, why is it growing, shrinking, or stagnant? Do we know this? Why does HR need to know that? I'm sorry? For staffing. What about staffing?
Plan for future needs. Product, whatever you have to make sure you're staffed to either make that product or sell that product.
Okay, so I got to be staffed to either make or sell the product. Is that an accurate statement, or do we need to add something more to that?
Looking at workforce planning, do you have the talent internally, or are you assessing external markets as well? And what does your plan look like to get those people who don't know?
What kind of talent do I need to sell, manufacture, or service, whatever it is? What kind of talent? How often, and again, I'm going to challenge you guys on some things. Just don't throw anything at me. How often, when you're in a business meeting with leadership and they start talking about market trends, the first thing out of your mouth is, how many people do I have to hire? How many people do I have to let go? How many people are going to be impacted by this? It's not always about the numbers in terms of quantity. Some cases, yes, that's an appropriate question to ask. But what I would say is the more appropriate question to ask is, what is the impact on the people, and what is it about the quality of the people that's going to be impacted? Not how many warm bodies do you want me to bring in? What are the skill sets I need to bring in? What are the skill sets our current staff has to have to still be effective 3 years from now? Or next year if you're in the tech sector? What kind of relationships do I need to build now with my recruiting sources that's going to get me the talent that I need that's prepared for 3 years down the road? That's a different question than how many people do I need to hire? We get to that later. Who and what I need to hire is the more strategic question and the basis of what we should be looking at least in this part of a market trend. What else should we be considering with market trends?
Market trends will partially determine your labor market or your labor pool.
Okay, how so? So just so everyone can hear it, she said that market trends will impact our labor market and labor pool. So how so?
I think if you're in a high demand area or high demand, you're trending up.
Okay.
Your labor pool will be much smaller, and you may geographically have to go outside of where you normally
Okay.
find your people.
So we may have to look geographically or outside of our geographic market. We're going to come back to that idea too with competitor info. When we look at where are we competing for talent? The reality is all the talent in your area currently employed? The talent that you want, is it currently employed? Maybe, okay? Some people are shaking their heads yes, some of you are just looking at me. I don't know. I know back home, they're employed. The people my clients want are employed. Who are we going to go get them from? And how are we going to lure them away? Why do they want to come to work for us? Because we're offering them $1 more an hour? No, it's going to be more than that. Because if I can steal someone for such a little amount of money, that means they can be stolen away from me for a little amount of money. I've got to think bigger than that. So if you're in a situation where, I don't care, a lot of times I will hear HR people say, oh, well, unemployment in our area is 3% or whatever the percentage is. And my response is, so what? What does that number even mean? Doesn't mean anything to me. What I care about is, where's the talent? I know with my staff, when they would come to me and say, well, hey, we're having trouble because unemployment's at 3%, I would say, so what? We're not hiring people off the unemployment rolls. We were a professional services firm at that particular job I was in. We're hiring college graduates. Help me understand why we can't fill our positions. To me, that comes back to our relationship with those universities and with the students that are coming up through, and what are we doing to attract them to us? Has nothing at all to do with the unemployment rate. Because we weren't going down to the local job service where the unemployed are filing their claims in order to find positions. They didn't have our skill set. So that number was irrelevant. But as HR, we'll fall back on that sometimes. Well, the unemployment rate is 3%. What do you want me to do, boss? Okay? So when we think about market trends, and that I'm going to start bleeding into key business metrics, it's not so much the numbers as whether we're talking about the correct numbers and whether we're considering the correct numbers. What other market trends do we need to focus on in HR as part of our strategic planning? Yeah.
Employment brand, candidate experience.
Thank you. Good friend of mine, he focuses on the recruitment experience, specifically the online recruitment experience. And he works with organizations that just cannot draw people in. And so sometimes I'm his guinea pig. And he said, I just signed up a new client. I want you to go out and apply for a job with them. I'm going to get your app, so it doesn't matter, but you go out and apply for the job. It took me, and he owed me for this, an hour and a half to complete all the stuff this company needed. And then, to add salt to the wound, I still had to upload a cover letter and resume. I said, now what the heck? Which is it? Which do you want? Because, come on, HR, how long do you give a resume? Let's be real. So you asked me for an hour and a half of my time just to get through all your yes and no's and everything else, and then you want me to upload all the stuff that I just typed in anyway. This doesn't make any sense. And this company was going, well, we don't know why we're not getting anybody. I was doing it for a beer. I was, but I would have to think twice whether I'd put myself through that unless it was a perfect employer brand. What is your employment brand in the marketplace? That's a trend as it compares to the employment brand of the organizations with whom you are competing for talent. Notice I didn't say your competitors. You could be the only pharmaceutical company within 100 miles. Don't tell me you've got the best employment brand of all pharmaceutical companies. Doesn't mean anything to me. You're not hiring people from outside of 100 miles. On occasion you will, obviously, but rarely. Who else are you competing for talent within your area? What's your brand like for that? You have to know that. And guess what? You're not getting that out of exit interviews. Go out to Glassdoor.com or some of those sites where former employees can anonymously post stuff, you'll start to get an idea what's going on. Now again, you got to take that with a grain of salt too, but look at those kind of things. Anyone here in hospitality, hotel, restaurant, anything along those lines? No? Okay. Those folks have it easy. They can go to Yelp and find out what their employment brand's like, what their customer brand's like. Those of us in private industry or maybe the government sector, a little bit harder. But we have to have a sense for that because it's going to bleed into all these other things. So let's go over to key business metrics. Next most important thing. What key business metrics do you need to be able to talk about?
Cost of acquisition.
Cost of acquisition. Good. I'm okay with that. Some people would start off with time to fill. It's a metric. I don't think it's a key business metric. I don't. What's my cost to acquire the right people? Because guess what? You tell me that time to fill, how many in here believe, be honest with me, that time to fill is an important metric? No one, because I just said it wasn't, probably. Okay, you know what though? I can impact time to fill all day long. How can I do it? Hire anybody I want, and I will manage that metric right down. Doesn't mean anything, okay? My true number is in the cost of that talent acquisition, okay? Because that's telling me, think about it, that cost goes up as the time to fill goes up. So I'm already capturing the time to fill metric. Only now I'm worried about the cost of hiring the proper people, not just bringing bodies through the door and filling in seats. Okay? So when you think about a key business metric, it has to mean something. That's why it's key. Okay? What else do I like that one. What else should we be talking about in HR as a key business metric? I'm sorry? Turnover. Hear it all the time. I disagree.
Top turnover.
What's that?
Losing your top stars.
Thank you. What kind of turnover am I having? That's what's critical. I don't care what the percentage is. What kind? I cringe when I sit in meetings and HR says, our turnover's 3%. So? Doesn't mean anything to me. I don't know what that means. Is that good? Is 3% turnover good? You better be sitting here saying, I don't know. Because we don't. Depends on who it is. Depends on those market trends. Probably depends a lot on our economy. Okay? There's lots of things that impact turnover, some of which have nothing to do with what's going on inside our facility. Don't care about total turnover percentage. Show me who's turning over. Show me that it's a specific demographic. I have a client that cannot keep African Americans on second shift. Is that a problem? Everyone in here should be going, yeah, that's a problem. It absolutely is a problem. We're working to figure out why. I think I know why. There are serious problems, okay? The kind no business wants to deal with. There are serious problems on this second shift, okay? But if you ask them what's your turnover, it's 5%. In manufacturing, back where I'm from, that's a good turnover rate. Problem is that 5% is one demographic. And it's getting to the point that demographic won't even come in the door. That's a problem. It's impacting their employment brand. So in that case, it's not just, quote, looking at the top talent leaving, it's a particular demographic that's leaving. What if your 5% turnover was all women? Is that a problem? Probably. Okay, so tell me who's turning over, not just turnover as a number, because it doesn't tell me anything. Tell me that it's my most experienced people. Tell me it's the people that have been with me less than 6 months. Tell me it's one specific job on one specific shift. I have a client that's a long-term retirement facility, and that's a high turnover environment, and they're so proud that their turnover is under 10%. Until I looked, and the whole reason it's under 10% is the vast majority of their workforce has been there 20 to 30 years because they're some of the original people that the owner hired when he started the business. Guess what? The other 10% of the workforce, it's a constant churn. Constant. So what's going to happen when those 20 to 30-year employees start aging out into retirement? All of a sudden, they're going to be not patting themselves on the back for their great turnover anymore because they're ignoring what's right in front of them, that they have a problem with turnover. It just hasn't gotten to epidemic proportions yet. Give me another key business metric.
Overall engagement.
Engagement, okay? So how do we measure engagement?
Well, traditionally, it would be an engagement survey, but I think
Okay?
some things that are measured within the engagement survey would be more important than the actual
Okay.
engagement survey. So leadership would
Okay.
be most important, I think, and obviously something we touched on earlier. But I think if your leaders are not performing well, it's impossible for the entire strategic plan to be executed.
Okay, so engagement is a piece. Absent one of those engagement surveys and having that data at our disposal, though, we have to make sure, if we're going to call it a metric, that we can measure it and know that those measurements are accurate. So where do we get anecdotal data from if we're trying to figure out engagement? We know that, I'll get you in one sec. We know that engagement can be found in turnover, in absenteeism, in production. I mean, there are certainly lots of other indicators we may not have an engaged workforce, and maybe we can tap into one of those, but I hear engagement a lot, and I like it, provided we have a way to accurately measure against it. Yeah. Oh, okay, all right. So, another key business metric. These are important if you haven't figured this one out yet. Time to productivity. Interesting. I like that one. You're good. You want the remote? No? Okay. So what is time? What is so important about time to productivity for us? Has anyone thought about that before? Why is that critical? What is it? I'm sorry? Absolutely it does. So if I have massive turnover, and all I'm doing is reporting on turnover, or maybe that time to fill, or all those other things, okay? I'm missing the fact that 10% of my workforce that's been turning is now in training stage, and therefore productivity's down, and widgets are coming out a mess, and the lawns aren't getting mown right, and people are being given the wrong medicine. I don't know, whatever it is that you do, stuff's happening because these folks are not fully trained and ready yet. And so we look at that and say, okay, maybe that's an indicator of the return on investment or lack thereof in our training function. And is that a key performance measure? Because we can learn a lot out of that time to productivity. Another one, it's hard to measure, but if we can get the numbers on it, then we can figure out what's impacting those numbers. What's the first thing when the economy tanks that gets cut in our budgets? Learning and development, training, whatever you want to call it. Does that make any sense to anyone in here? Because it doesn't make any sense to me. And I argue with business owners all the time on this. I look and say, when do you need your people at their absolute best? When the economy stinks, maybe we're downsizing, and we need our people all hands on deck, that we've reduced some headcount perhaps. We're asking people to do more. And oh, by the way, we're not going to train you to do more. We're not going to keep your skills updated. But we want you to be more productive, and we want to make the company more productive or profitable. Doesn't make any sense. Okay? But if we can learn to talk about training in terms of a key business metric, in terms of the return on investment that we're going to get from that training. If I implement this training, give me $10,000, boss, here's what I'm going to do with it, and here's what I'm going to guarantee comes out the other side. How can they refuse? Because it's an investment and not a cost. So some of the metrics we need to be thinking about in HR, we've just got to spin how we're talking about them so that management sees that we're talking about it in terms of the investment potential and not a cost potential. Because too many executives look at HR as what? Overhead. Who said it? Who said overhead? Overhead. Thank you. We're just overhead. You do this HR strategic plan, there is no way anyone could possibly read through your plan and look what you have and say you're pure overhead. They're going to say you're the lifeblood of this organization. We know we are. We have trouble articulating it. Other functions have gotten so much better at articulating their value than we have. And that's our only problem, is articulating it. That's what our HR strategic plan can do for us. Okay? I'm stealing some of my own thunder. All right, let's go on to financial analysis. What are some financial indicators we have to be able to talk about? Because again, we could talk about each one of these for an hour at a time. What financial analysis should we be looking at in HR? We've talked about some of them with key business metrics, but what else can we be looking at? Overtime and sick time. What does that tell me? What does overtime tell me? I don't have enough people to manage the workload, perhaps. Or the right people, perhaps. What's that? The right process, perhaps. Too late, perhaps. Do you see the problem with overtime measurement? There's too many perhapses in there. Okay, so we've got to figure out what's really behind our overtime, which means we've got to do some analysis. We start to see overtime climbing. Again, I don't care about I want to reduce overtime by 10% this year. It doesn't mean anything to me. Because you know what? Sometimes overtime's okay. If I've got to get a project out for one of our best clients, and I say, no, we're going to take the late time on that because we're going to reduce overtime, that's a problem. Every now and then overtime's okay. I had a client who couldn't figure out why their overtime was through the roof. And this was a company that manufactured high-end kitchen cabinetry, bath cabinetry, that sort of thing. And they were in a bit of a slump. Housing had hit a slump in their area. And yet overtime was going up. So we've got profits going down, revenues going down. We've got overtime going up. We've got slow shipping times. I mean, all the indicators, none of them made any sense. So they actually had a security system in the facility. And I went into the facility, or into the security system with the owner. And we sat there, and of course there's monitors everywhere. And I had to laugh because I see this guy carrying a 2x4, and he's walking along, right? And he disappears off the screen. Now, mind you, there's a manager standing here talking to an employee. Like 2 minutes later, same dude, same 2x4, he comes walking back. This happened 4 times, folks. Right past the manager. Now, I'm sitting there saying, what is this guy doing with this 2x4? I don't know. It hasn't been processed. It hasn't gotten shortened. It hasn't gotten fancified. It hasn't gotten stained. Nothing has happened to this hunk of wood in 10 minutes. But he's crossed over my screen 4 times with it, right past the supervisor. I said, right there's one of your problems. Well, that's Joe doing whatever. Okay, but what's the supervisor doing? Here's a guy for 10 minutes is walking around with this hunk of wood on his arm. He's not doing anything with it. Here's what we were finding. You mentioned about processes, okay? So their process was that the customer puts the order in, you cut the hunk of wood, so I cut it to spec, goes to you. Your job is to now maybe put dents in it, beat it up, give it that worn look, okay? Then it goes to you. Now, in the meantime, you were supposed to check that my measurements were accurate. Goes to you. You're supposed to check to make sure that her beating up of the wood was proper. Now you're going to stain it, okay? Now you're supposed to make sure that the stain was proper, and you're going to put the hinges on, and you're supposed to make sure it's the right hinges. You see what I'm saying? There were double checks in place. Was any of that happening? Nope. It would get to Matthew here, and he'd say, that's the wrong stain. Well, it's too late now. Stains on, hinges on, we've wasted all that effort. Guess where it has to go? Back to the beginning again. Now, we could not figure out whether or not this was something nefarious to create overtime. All we knew was that the process was broken, and that's why overtime was going up. And that's why shipping times were missing. Because it was rework after rework after rework after rework, which was cutting into their profitability in this otherwise lean time. So when we look at that from a financial standpoint, if we just went in and said, oh, it's overtime, no, it was a process issue and a behavior issue. That employees weren't following the right process. That's what was leading to the overtime. So again, let's not worry about managing the overtime, let's worry about managing what's behind it as a piece of our financial analysis. Which, guess what? When you have all that rework, it's a whole lot of raw material waste going on too. What else should we be looking at with financial analysis? Come on, you guys got 30 to 80% of the financial budget you're responsible for. That's a whole lot of money. What else do you have to be worried about?
I want to know how many people are hitting the maximum pay band.
Okay, how many people are at the max of the pay band?
How many people are actually green? So you want to have
And how many green circles do we have? Okay? So, why would I care about that? What do those two indicators tell me?
You've got a lot of people at the max end of the pay band. You may be looking at an aging workforce.
Okay, that's a good one. So perhaps I've got a bunch of 30-year employees. They've been around getting their raises year after year after year, and they're pushing up against the max or they're over the max. That's the nice side of it, is they've been around. What's the nefarious side of having all these people at the top? Yeah, thank you. Supervise, I'm going to be nice. You're a 4, you're a 5, whatever it takes to get you the maximum out of the pay. Okay? I had an organization, this is critical. They called because they were losing market share. And the reason they were losing is that they were no longer competitive in their bids for business. And when we started looking at it, I found 80% of their workforce was red circled, or should have been red circled. They were over the max. Okay? But they kept giving them raises. They were all 25 and 30-year employees. There was nothing nefarious going on. But they kept getting raises and raises and raises. And when I did a market study of those jobs, we found that the majority of their people were being paid 20% above the market. That will cut into your ability to be competitive in the marketplace. So you should know where your people are in pay ranges. Okay? What's going on? Do we have supervisors inflating? If we've got green circles, why? Why are we bringing people in below our minimum? I had an HR manager say, I was designing their comp program, and he said, Ed, so this pay band, it was like $12 an hour to $15 an hour. It's entry level. He says, but I want to layer in there for $10 an hour. Like, why? We've just said that the minimum is $12. Yeah, but no, that's their higher rate. They go to $12 after 6 months. I said, no, but we just said that $12 was the minimum of the pay range. And he was not, do you guys get what I'm saying? Why are we bringing people in at $10 if we've said the minimum for the pay range is $12? I don't understand that. And it took me an hour with this HR director to get him to understand that he was violating his own pay band by paying people far less than the market. And he was wondering why he couldn't find people. Well, but they're not coming back to you about productivity. He says, well, they're not productive in their first 6 months. Well, would you rather have someone working here learning how to be productive or not have anyone working here? Because that's really your choice. Okay? That $2 an hour is huge in that industry. So what do the numbers mean behind it? Okay, that's what's critical. Give me one more on financial analysis, then we'll move on. Give me something else we should be working on or thinking about.
Injury rates, lost time days.
Injuries. Okay. So do I care about lost time days? I should, she says. I will tell you, my undergrad degree is in industrial safety, so I have a little bit of a soft spot for this. I told you I would challenge you. Do I care about lost time days?
Yes.
Why?
The lost time days can reflect into your training and the safety culture of your organization.
Okay, let's forget culture for a minute. I'm talking about financial analysis.
When you got to shut your entire plant down to do an OHC investigation, that costs you money.
Okay, now we're talking in terms management wants to hear. If we're talking about financial analysis, don't tell me that the average workplace injury costs me 9 workdays lost or 20 workdays lost. So what is what I'm going to say. So what? What does that mean to me? Tell me what it costs in terms of dollars, in lost productivity, in commitment to our customers. Give me the story behind the numbers. Again, remember what I said, HR, we are our own worst enemy in this function because we fall back to the people. Oh, but our average injury costs someone 9 days of time. Okay, I'm sad for that person. I am. What does it mean to the business? Because what's going to happen when we start talking in terms of those dollars? What's management going to do? Why? Because it hits the bottom line. So start telling me, okay, yeah, our average lost time rate is 9 days, and that equates to X thousands of dollars in revenue hit. We need to take 10 grand and start retraining our people on this particular item. There's your metric. There's your analysis of saying, okay, if I want to impact this number, what do I have to do to impact it? And how can I make the sale based on dollars and cents? Someone earlier said one of the key business metrics, and it bled into financial analysis, was tracking how many people attend training. I said, I don't care how many people attend training. I don't. What do I care about? The return. And how do I get the return? How do I figure that out? It's based on the training. So if I said, everyone in here, you have to go to our annual sexual harassment prevention training. Okay, great. So I checked the box. Everyone went. What do I really care about? Not that you went to the training, but that what? You're not harassing people. That's what I care about. Okay? I had a mechanic lose several fingers, or tips of fingers, because he didn't lock out a machine he was working on. Had he been trained? Yes, he was trained. For like 10 straight years, he went through lockout training. Why didn't he do it? Lazy. He knew he could fix the machine in about 5 minutes. Quick fix, get it done. It was literally a 10-minute walk across the facility to get to his lock. 10-minute walk back, he could have it all done by then. Cost him 3 fingertips. The guy was trained, but his behavior didn't change. From a financial analysis standpoint, when we ask for training money, it should be about behavior change. What commitment can we get out of that money that's going to change people's behavior? That bleeds up into a key business metric as well. Okay? So it's not the fact that you're doing training or that 90% of your people have been trained. It doesn't matter. It's what's the effect of that training that really matters. Okay? Now, we could talk about the business metrics and the financial analysis for the rest of the afternoon. There's lots more there. But hopefully I've gotten you started in thinking about, from an HR strategy standpoint, how do you need to be thinking? What questions do you need to be asking in those areas? And let's kind of keep moving in the sake of progress here. So, environmental changes. How is that different than market trends? They are different, that's why they're on here. But how are they different? We could talk about the actual environment. Okay? Do you have a seasonal business? How reliant on the weather is your business? Either in terms of profitability. If you're in the heating oil business, you want a really cold, long winter. If you're in the swimming pool business, you really don't want a long, cold winter. You know? So when we think about the environment, we can actually think about the actual environment out there, the climate. Especially if you rely on outdoor work. But from an environmental standpoint, what's going on with laws and regulations in your area or in your industry? And how's that going to impact your business? Don't tell me that the latest law that's put out is going to slow hiring down, because it sounds like an excuse. Tell me how we're going to address it and what the financial impact of that law is going to be on us. Now you're talking strategically, okay? So being aware of technology changes, being aware of the latest things that you're in, this getting into competitors, but what products and services are your competitors doing that's impacting how you need to react? Environment also is your culture. Culturally, what's going on in your organization? And can we Can we put numbers to that? I have a business owner right now who says to me, there's really nothing wrong with our culture, Ed. And I would agree. There's nothing really wrong with his culture. He doesn't have a bad culture. It's a small company. It's an advertising and marketing firm. The problem is that the culture isn't what the employees want. It's not bad, but it's not what the employees want. He's early 60s. He's got a couple people in their 40s, and then 20 people that are under 30. They want some different stuff. And to give you one little example, they asked him for a Keurig in the break room. And he thinks this is the silliest thing ever. And I said, look, it may sound silly. And I'm not a huge coffee guy, so it really doesn't matter to me either way. But if they want flavored coffee, and you know it's only going to cost you a couple $100, what does the difference make? Buy the doggone coffee machine, stick it in the break room. They're not asking you for $10,000. They're not asking you for a Starbucks kiosk in your break room. They're asking for a Keurig. So, and he kind of looked at me like, really, Ed, you're on their side? Because usually, as his advisor, I'm on his side about how we're trying to change things there. But I said, they've got a point. It's little. They're asking for it. Give it to them. They're not asking for something over the top. So when you think about the environment, and this ties back into your financial analysis, how are you using the resources that you have? How are the demographics in your workplace changing? Someone mentioned demographics earlier or something. Okay, this is where it comes in. What demographics in terms of the age of your workforce, the gender makeup, the racial makeup, anything you want to put in there, the level of college graduates, I don't care, whatever slice of the pie. What does that look like in your organization, and how is that changing over time? And what do those groups want that's different? How many of you have company picnics? Nobody has like a company party? Really? Like half the room, the first one, it's only a couple of you. Excellent. Okay, so those of you that do it, why do you do it? Do the people care? Do they want it? We don't know. We're not sure. Okay? Those of you that don't do it, why don't you do it? Are you a bunch of Grinches? You don't want a party? All I heard from the CPHR folks was that you guys were a fun group. Ed, you come on up and see us. We're a fun group. Well, you guys don't party. Why don't you party? Why do you not have parties for your people? What's that? Because you're in HR. There's no fun in HR.
In our area, we tried to host a couple.
Okay.
The return for the number of people who actually came out versus the amount of time that we
Okay.
were planning it wasn't worth it.
Wasn't worth it. People spoke, did they not? But how do we know if we don't? I'm not advocating company parties, okay? I'm not, okay? But I want to give you an example. So, organization throws big company bash every year. This organization has grown like mad back home, and it started out that they would have a big pig roast picnic on their grounds. And as the company's grown, they've just gotten too big to do that. So they now go to the local amusement park. Now, it's expensive. So what they've done is they cover the employee, but they ask for all the family members to pitch in $5. Now, it normally costs like $55, $65 to get into the park. They're giving you food, so I mean, $5, you know. 30% of their people go to the company picnic. And a bunch of those that are going complain every year about paying $5 for their kids to go enjoy the day at the amusement park. Forget that they normally would be paying $65. They're complaining about it. What are those people telling that organization? That, by the way, is spending $40,000 on this event. I looked at them and I said, why are you spending $40,000 on 30% of your people, half of whom are complaining about it? And what did they tell me? We've always had a company picnic, Ed. And I said, so what? Meanwhile, they give, same company, gives all of their employees on their birthday a gift certificate. It's worth about $10 to go down to the local bakery, get a birthday cake. Any flavor you want, any icing you want, any combination, decorations. It doesn't even have to say happy birthday. Maybe it's your anniversary. Slap that on there. Your kid's birthday. Doesn't matter. 99% of those certificates get renewed or used every year. 99%, $10 a head. What are the people saying? What's of value? That's an environmental thing. Do we know what our people want in terms of the reward system, in terms of the culture of the workplace? When's the last time you asked what they want? We spend so much time sitting in boardrooms and meetings saying, how much money are we going to allot for benefits this year? Oh, it's this number. And okay, we'll go out and buy the medical coverage and we'll give them so many sick days and we'll do this and we'll do that, blah, 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 blah. And here's the nut. Boom. Great. 5 of us sat there and decided for 1,000 people what they're going to take. Doesn't make any sense to me. When's the last time you asked your people what they want? I had an organization that was paying 100% medical coverage. I mean, you just don't hear that anymore. At least down home, we don't. 100% of medical coverage covered. And people were complaining about it. They didn't want that. Guess what? They were all under 30. They're going to live. They're going to be invincible. They're going to live forever. They don't need health care coverage. And the owner, obviously a generous guy, said, well, they don't know that. I said, I agree, but what are they telling you they value? Back off on the money you're spending here and put it over here where they're asking for it. It's not rocket science. Don't do for your people what you think they deserve or what they need. Give them what they want. That's within reason and within budget. But you got to at least ask them. Okay? That's an environmental scan. What's happening? What's happening in your workplace right now in terms of your culture and your makeup? You've got to have a thumbprint on that. And one of the ways you can do it, and again, I don't want to see a show of hands, but I want you to really think about this. When's the last time you went on a sales call with a member of your sales team? Or hopped on a truck with a delivery driver? Or walked around the production floor at 3 o'clock in the morning? Or went on rounds with a nurse at 11 o'clock at night? If you haven't done those things as an HR person, I say shame on you. How else can you know what's really going on in your workplace environment to impact your people if you're not actually out there seeing what's going on with those very same people? So let's kind of keep moving. Where do customers come into play here? Why do we care about customer feedback as it relates to our HR strategic plan? What's in there that's so critical? I'm sorry? Okay, the customer experience. And what would we learn from that?
Service provided by your employee.
Okay, so our frontline people and their interaction with the customer. So if all we do is preach about quality and we manufacture the best widgets available, but we've got a cruddy sales staff, or the sales staff doesn't know how to market that widget, doesn't matter how good it is. There have been numerous studies done that you can convince someone to buy just about anything, even if it's substandard, based on how well you communicate. In fact, some of it's even come down to color. There have been studies done, the pudding manufacturers have this down to a science. Do you really think there's that much difference between milk chocolate, dark chocolate, deep mocha fudge, and anything other than the food coloring they're putting in that stuff? There's really not. Honestly, there's not. Okay, anyone in here work in food? No? No food people in here? I've got some food clients. And there's very little flavor variations. Sometimes it's all in the color. Okay? It's down to some of the pudding manufacturers served vanilla pudding tinted as chocolate, and people raved it was the best chocolate pudding they ever had. There wasn't an ounce of chocolate in the stuff. It was just brown food coloring in there. Okay? So how that ties back into customer feedback is, what are our customers telling us about our products and services that we can relate back and use that to better our HR decision-making process? Does it have something to do with who we're bringing in the door to service those customers, or the training we're giving those people, or the motivation behind what they do? I cut my early career teeth at UPS. And who impacts the most whether or not you get your box on time? Delivery person. Guess again. The truck driver? Guess again.
The shipper.
No. A hungover college kid working at 3 o'clock in the morning, putting your packages on those trucks. And I know this because I was one of those hungover college kids doing it. okay? The driver can only deliver what's on his or her truck that day. If I look and see Main Street and I put Main Street on the wrong truck, oh well. Where does this come into the customer feedback? Those part-time employees who still are part-time at UPS are critical to whether or not you get your package on time. Yet, while I was an hourly employee there, not once was that ever communicated to me. What was communicated to me was production. Get the boxes, get them in the trucks, get them off the conveyor belt in the trucks. If boxes started piling up because you didn't have them loaded, you got yelled at. So when you got a box, you know where it went? You made it disappear. Get it in the truck. Doesn't matter if it's in the wrong spot. Get it in the truck. Now, we didn't have, it's 30 years ago, we didn't have all the tracking mechanisms and everything that they've got in place now to avoid some of that business, okay? But it was never conveyed to me that I was impacting the customer, okay? So how many positions do you have like that that may not be customer-facing that are absolutely critical? Can they connect those dots? Do they know that what they're doing is impacting your customer and how and why? That comes back to communication. But we've got to know what our customers are saying and what they value about doing business with us, because that will drive our culture. I'm sorry, I went backwards. I didn't want to go backwards. And finally, the last thing up there is our competitor info. What do we want to know about our competitors? Okay. What do we want to know about them?
What they do versus what we do.
Okay, in terms of what? Be specific for me.
I guess we just want to see what different value do they offer that.
Okay. So you're thinking about competitors in terms of someone else who's doing exactly what you do. Okay, so what's their value proposition versus ours?
What other needs are they meeting of the customers?
Okay, what needs of the customers are they meeting? It's not that I don't care about those. What do those have to do with HR?
I think it's important to know what your competitors are paying. And
Okay.
when you think about competitors, it's not like widget, they sell the same widgets as you. It's like if I need a CPA to run the finance department in my area, you don't necessarily have to be a previous widget company.
Mm-hmm.
CPA.
Exactly. They got to be able to add 2 plus 2.
Yeah, so I think we need to know and understand what our competitors holistically.
Exactly. Who are your competitors is the operative word here. Not because there's another widget maker down the street. With whom are you competing for talent? That's what I'm talking about. And so when you start thinking about that, a lot of times folks will call me and they'll say, Ed, do a salary study for us. I'll say, great. I'm going to do demographics and I'm going to do industry. Well, we just want industry. No, you're getting geographic demographics in there. Because what if you're the only widget maker within 100 miles? Then who cares? We have to know who our competitors are for talent and what they're doing and how that impacts everything going around the horn. Okay, so once we get that stuff, then we can start to figure out how do we connect the dots between those items and what the other functions are doing as well. And how do we need to partner up with sales and marketing and finance and whomever to either get the information that we need that we just talked about, or because we need their help in implementing some of this stuff. We can't do this alone, and especially those of you that are sole practitioners, you're the only one in your place of business, you definitely can't do this alone. So that's the next phase, is figuring out I've got my plan now, I've looked at all of these things and my key metrics and what I want to do to impact them, how do I integrate it? You got to sit down and talk to these folks. What is it you need from me? How can I support you? Here are the things that are important, I believe, to HR and impacting the company's strategic plan. Is that dead on for you, sales? Is that dead on for you, IT? If not, what do I need to do? We have to thicken our skin up a little bit and ask for that constructive feedback from these folks so we can go back and amend our plan if we need to. Now, we're in the home stretch, so again, these slides will be out there. But take a look at this list of all of these things get impacted by our strategic plan. All of them. We've got to consider them as we're putting our plan together, if our company's going through some of these issues. Okay? It was part of our environmental scan. What's going on in our business that's going to impact our strategic plan? Okay, and again, I just filled up one slide with some bullet points here of things, but there could be many others that you might say, yeah, these are other results of what the operating plan could have on HR and vice versa. So what I want you to think about is everything starts with that business strategy. We talked about that, and that bleeds out into your culture and your HR strategy. Okay, and that's why the HR strategy is so critical, because it really addresses everything that we do in HR, which is putting that total rewards mix together. And if we get the right people and they're satisfied, then we get the business results. But none of that happens if we don't get this outer arc correct and communicate it out properly. Nothing else happens. If you're struggling from an HR standpoint in your business, take a look at this diagram when you get these slides and say, where is the breakdown along here? This is from World at Work. I love this organization. I love this particular graph. I think it really, from an HR standpoint, helps us stay focused on the things that really matter to us. Some would argue, well, compliance should be up there. Come on, compliance is compliance. It does not lead us to attraction, motivation, and retention. It's just something we got to do, okay? We know we got to do it. These are the things that really matter. And I would say the one that we didn't talk about, right here, work-life. That's part of the environment you've got to consider. What are you expecting out of your people in return for their efforts? And what are they willing to give you in return for those rewards based on where they're at? Okay? So, what should be included? We've hit most of these things. They fit into those 6 items in the circle somewhere. These are things at a minimum. I think if you start off, you say, Ed, I don't know where to start, pick one of these and say, this is important to me. I'm going to look at some key performance measures for my training and career development. And just work on that one. Don't try and bite the whole strategic plan at once. Just take one little piece of it and work on it. Get that little success and then move on to the next one. And that way you don't have to eat the elephant all at once. This stuff takes time. Don't think you're going to go back after this session on Friday or whatever and say, oh, I'm going to do my strategic plan because I like what that guy said. Oh, this is going to take you months to do this stuff. So just pick one lane and stick to it. And I suggest, picking one of these lanes and then go back to the little matrix there and look at how does performance management get impacted by those 6 items we just talked about and spend a lot of time on. And then do the same thing with each one of these items or other items that you feel are important to you. So I said at the beginning, I believe in homework. You want to get started on this and you want to start getting feedback from your people, take these questions back. Talk about them amongst your HR department, amongst your fellow managers. Get this discussion going as a way to get yourself started on figuring out what's important. If you can only start one piece of the pie from that previous slide, these questions and talking to other department heads, maybe talking to some employees out on the front line, might give you a good idea of where you need to start and start the place that's going to give you the biggest impact. Whether that's financially or people, whatever the biggest problem you're having, then pick the lane that's going to get you a solution to that problem as you're working on your strategy. So I know we're right at time. I'm happy to hang out and chat with anyone who would like to delve into something a little bit further. If you have some thoughts for me, again, there are evals on the tables. I love getting immediate feedback rather than waiting for a couple weeks or months till the conference is done. So if you have some thoughts for me, go ahead and jot those down and leave those on the table. But thank you for your willingness to chat and enjoy the rest of the conference.